Ariane is a first-time speaker at Nerd Nite, and I don't know, did you make it to an event? Is that how you heard about us? I can't remember. I think we got in touch on email when you volunteered to speak. But it's also famous for having done the Atheist Bus Campaign. Her bio is in all of the promo materials, but has also written a book, which I think some of this talk will be based on. We will be plugging it at the end. Ariane, you should plug it during. And we will also obviously be posting the link for how to buy it and all that. I mean, you've got lots of time to read on your hands now, everyone, haven't you? So if you want to ask questions during Ariane's talk, tag at NerdEvie in the WhatsApp chat. If you make it really clear with the cat's question for Ariane, I know that we're several jinx in now and it's all getting a little bit harder, but it makes it easier for Evie to scroll through and pick out the questions. At the end of her talk, we will put those to her. Are you ready? I will hand over. Please feel free to introduce yourself, Ariane.
Excellent. Can you see that?
Can see you, can't see the slides yet.
Can you see the slides now?
No, not yet.
Oh, maybe I have to, let's have a look. Says screen sharing has failed to stop. Please try again later.
Are you recording this individually? Are you recording this for yourself, or is it just us recording it? Okay.
No, I'm not.
I was wondering if there's anything you could do to your bandwidth, maybe.
Let me try again. Yeah? Are we good?
Yes, we are. Hurrah! Excellent. Well done.
Amazing.
Okay, well, that was a very smooth transition. Ariane, over to you.
Hey guys, can I just say how lovely this is? I haven't seen a single other person today, and it's so nice to see all your lovely faces on my screen, so I'm feeling a lot happier now. This talk is about drugs and how to procure them, pharmaceutical drugs. I had a nervous breakdown 10 years ago, and I was intent on ending my life. And the reason I didn't is because of 3 pharmaceutical drugs that I am now on for life. They are an antipsychotic called olanzapine, an anticonvulsant called pregabalin, and a tricyclic antidepressant called clomipramine. Now, we often see articles such as this, and we have talking heads and columnists say things like, oh, we're becoming a nation of pill poppers, and you often hear talk about big pharma with all everything that goes with that, and people often say, well, why can't people just have therapy instead? Therapy is better than drugs. And while it's true, when they do studies, that the treatment outcomes for therapy versus medication are pretty much the same, there are many reasons why people can't just have therapy. Now, to start with, access to therapists is very limited on the NHS. As we all know, the NHS is hugely overstretched, and especially when it comes to care for mental health. Waiting lists are often months long, which obviously isn't good if you're suicidal. If you want to go private, therapy is very expensive. Typical cost of a basic counselling session in London is £50, and I've also been quoted up to £160 for a specialist therapist in his field. Now, patients may also be physically unable to access therapy. They may be housebound, they may be in a wheelchair, and they're just not able to physically get to a therapy session. Patients may also be psychologically averse to therapy. When I had my breakdown, I was convinced that MI5 and the government were monitoring me. And so I wouldn't tell a therapist anything because I thought that they were recording everything I said and feeding it back to intelligence agencies. CCBT is an option. Computer CBT is basically where you have therapy with a computer, and it's a program that guides you through challenging your negative thoughts and unhelpful behaviors, but it isn't suitable for everybody. It's suitable for mild to moderate cases of anxiety and depression, but if you have severe depression, you really need face-to-face therapy. And also, some patients don't get on with therapy. For instance, if you have a therapist that you don't like, then you won't want to confide in them. You won't want to trust them with your innermost thoughts and feelings. So then what do? Do you go right back to the start of the waiting list if you're on the NHS and wait another few months for therapy? I should also say that it's not an either or scenario. So when they do studies and randomize groups to either therapy or medication, these groups come out as virtually equivalent. But when you have a third group that's on both therapy and medication, they are streets ahead in terms of their treatment outcomes. So you may choose to have both therapy and medication if you have severe problems. So how do you know which meds are right for you? Well, your doctor will make an educated guess. You will explain your symptoms to your doctor, and they will put you on meds that generally help people with your condition. The first line med is, it's called citalopram. So generally, effects and is thought to help the most people. I personally don't get on with SSRIs, but a lot of people do. So then you try generally citalopram, and you might report back and then your doctor might tweak your prescription. They might either prescribe a different med or they might adjust the dosage. And it can be a very long process of trial and error. So I would say do your own research. So you know your own brain better than anyone. If you have a broken leg, absolutely defer to your doctor and go with whatever they say is going to fix it. But when it comes to mental health, your doctor can't see inside your head. So you need to be able to articulate your symptoms. And you can also go on sites that are very useful, such as askapatient.com and drugs.com. These sites are absolutely chock full of reviews of different drugs. So you want to find a drug that works for people with the same symptoms as you. I did this. I was having intrusive thoughts and obsessing and ruminating about people possibly wanting to kill me. And I needed a drug that was going to stop the intrusive thoughts. So I thought, well, what's happening? I'm obsessing. So I went on askapatient.com and I unearthed this drug. It's a tricyclic antidepressant called clomipramine. It was basically patented in the 1960s. So it's out of patent now. It's not making people a lot of money. Doctors do not like to prescribe it because of its side effects. It is linked to an increased risk of dementia. But I went to my doctor and I begged him for it, and he eventually said, well, okay, we can put you on it, but I can't imagine it will be a magic bullet. And it was a magic bullet. So when you see your doctor, you really need to advocate yourself. The 10 minutes that you see your doctor in are not going to change their life. You are one of many, many patients they will see that day. But these 10 minutes could completely change your own life. So you need to write down and rehearse your speech for your doctor. Argue your case for the drug you want and be insistent. If your doctor does not want to prescribe this particular med for you, but you feel that it is maybe the last resort, like I did with clomipramine, then other GPs are available. And I know it's a faff to go and see another GP. Here are some bad things about taking meds. I'm generally a very big proponent of meds as well as therapy, but there are bad things. So you may develop a dependency on your meds, and you may experience withdrawal symptoms if you don't have your meds. Now, this is more likely if you're on sort of short, fast-acting meds that wear off, such as benzodiazepines like Valium. But it can happen with any med. You could also forget to take or reorder your meds. Now that's on you, and you need to set reminders on your phone to remind you to reorder your meds in good times so that you don't run out. Now, there may be shortages of meds. I don't know if the supply chains will have been set up to provide constant supply of pharmaceuticals, such as after Brexit. When we finally leave the EU rules on the 31st of December, will we be plunged into a situation where there are just, our meds are not available? I don't know. It creates a lot of anxiety. There are also side effects to meds. So some of these might be tolerable. My main side effect is weight gain. But some people find it hard to achieve an erection. I don't have this problem. Also, some people might find it difficult to achieve orgasm. Now, if that was the case for me, then I would just deal with it, because personally, for me, it's better to be sane and orgasm free than the alternative. But you know, your mileage may vary. There are often also long-term side effects, and these can be completely unknown. I mean, for me, because I'm on 3 different meds, these meds have been studied independently, but they haven't been studied altogether. So I don't know what they're doing to me. I mean, they could be making me live forever, but I somehow doubt that. So I would say don't avoid taking meds if you need to, just because of the side effects. If the side effects are tolerable, they might not be ideal, but if they're tolerable and otherwise the med's working great for you, then I would say, you know, stay on it. But also don't overestimate the chances of experiencing side effects. So for instance, my med doubles the chance of you getting dementia. And that sounds like terrible. Like the enormity of that is like, oh my God, if you have 50% chance of getting dementia, then you're almost certain to get it. And it's like, no. So if you look at the statistics, so between the ages of 65 and 69, you have a 2% chance as an individual of getting dementia. And so obviously if my med doubles that, then that's a 4% chance. And you know, even if it quadruples it, that's only an 8% chance. So I've still got a 92% chance of not developing dementia. This is my main side effect. I have almost doubled my body weight. Witness me on the left before meds, 7.5 stone, and then after meds, 14.5 stone. But again, I would rather be sane and happy and fat than skinny and completely convinced that MI5 are trying to kill me. So lastly, here's some good things about taking meds. They're more convenient than therapy. Of course, you don't need to travel to take your meds. They take up far less time. They're cheap on the NHS. They're either free or £8.80 per drug prescription. So I pay about £25 every 2 months for 3 drugs, which when compared to the USA, where it runs into like thousands of pounds, is like crazy cheap. We are so lucky to have the NHS. Meds can affect change and bring about relief very quickly. When I went on clomipramine, it was evident from like the first dose that this was going to be a med that gave me a lot of relief and worked for me. The exception is SSRIs. SSRIs can take months to work, definitely weeks to work. And of course, meds can save the lives of suicidal patients. So I am, you know, a massive proponent of them, and I say don't believe all the scare stories. Now, if you would like to read more about meds and therapy, then there is a very good book called Talk Yourself Better that coincidentally happens to be written by me. And It's a very funny and honest look at what it's really like to have therapy. It features some people you might have heard of, like Stephen Fry, David Baddiel, Charlie Brooker, and also a lot of people you won't have heard of who have spoken, some of them on condition of anonymity, but all of whom have very compelling stories to tell about how they experienced trauma and how they recovered thanks to therapy. Thank you so much for having me, Nerd Nite London, and I will hand you back to Louise.
Thank you. That was super interesting and very open. And I again have not been monitoring the WhatsApp, so I'm assuming that there are questions, and I will. Oh, this is Nick is playing around with the tech. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. Yes, questions. Sorry, my face popped up on screen then, and that was has thrown me all over the place. Yeah, Evie, do we have some questions to Ariane?
Yes. We do have some questions. We have a request as well. The request is whether we can have sane and orgasm-free. So I think that's one for the Nerd Nite team merch department to think about. Our first question comes from Katie. Questions for Ariane. Did the first talking therapist you found help, or did you have to shop around?
First talking therapist I had was fantastic. She was the first adult to ever take the time to listen to me properly, and she was unusually straight talking. This is when I was about 18 years old, and I developed a negative obsession with a celebrity who my boyfriend fancied, and all I could think about was this person. And I said to my therapist, I just don't feel that I can be alive while she's alive. And my therapist went, yeah, you know, that's a bit crazy, right? And I was like, are you meant to be calling me crazy? But it actually helped sort of snap me out of it. So yeah, my first talking therapist was great. Unfortunately, who wasn't so great. But yeah, a lot of the time you do have to shop around because the therapist and their relationship with you is as important as the type of therapy that you're having. And when they do studies and they test different types of therapy, they come out as pretty much equivalent to each other. And they hypothesize that this is because the relationship between the therapist and the client is as powerful as the type of therapy, if not more powerful.
Excellent, thank you. Question from Chris. Top tips for choosing a therapist. What question should you be asking in your first session?
So I would say, do you like them? And also, do you trust them? Do you feel able to confide in them about your innermost, deepest, darkest thoughts? And also, do you like them as a person? And also, do you respect them? Do they seem professional? Do they seem to have it all together? Because I think one of my problems that I had with my last therapist, she was absolutely lovely, and I stayed with her for 3 years. But I would go to her and I would talk about my problems with my weight and how I desperately wanted to be skinny again and to change the way that I was eating and the way I was thinking. And the problem was that my therapist herself was morbidly obese, and she was about a size 20, and so I felt really bad for talking about my weight when I was smaller than her. And also, I felt that she couldn't really help me with that because it was clearly something that she struggled with herself. So I guess my advice would also be, you know, maybe see a therapist who you believe can help you with the problem that you're having.
Right. Great answer. Another question is from Mahima. What's your view on psychedelic drugs and their role in mental health?
So I didn't even know about psychedelic drugs until I gave a talk last week in Birmingham, and a guy came up to me and he went, I'm very interested in psilocybin. And apparently psilocybin is the active component of magic mushrooms. And there have been all these cases of people who have taken psilocybin and they have basically recovered and are now depression free. And so I went away and did a little bit of research into it. Apparently there are retreats that you can go on in the Netherlands where it's legal to take psilocybin, and they have doctors and nurses on hand because people can have very bad trips. Now so far I think it's kind of, there's not that much evidence. It's sort of emerging, trials are underway, and it would be very interesting. I don't feel that in all good conscience I can say, yeah, go and take psilocybin and it might fix you. I can totally understand people wanting to take it if they have tried drugs, if their depression is treatment resistant and they're at their wits' end. Sure, I can totally understand that. But without there being more research, I think it's hard to sort of recommend them, if that makes sense.
Our last question comes from Robert. And the question is, could being more demanding of doctors lead to American-style direct-to-consumer marketing for drugs, and how to avoid this?
You mean sort of advocating for yourself? Well, I don't think doctors are any stranger to people turning up. I mean, the big one is antibiotics. Doctors are always being asked for antibiotics for colds, and they're always having to say, no, they won't work on your cold and you shouldn't be on them, and we don't give them out willy-nilly because you might develop resistance to antibiotics and then you'll be in really big trouble when you do need them. And so pushing back to requests for drugs, I don't think that it would lead to a different kind of system. I think the thing that's more likely to lead to an American style system is the Tory government, Brexit, any possible trade deals with Trump. I mean, it's very scary. But
so he's in need of some medication right now.
Please, let's keep it.
Yeah, no, I would definitely.
Yeah. I think that was the last of our questions, and once again, applause in the WhatsApp group.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was really good, and I am quite keen to know what my quarantine reading list is going to be starting with.